Howdy everyone. Thank you for joining me today to the Indigenous Culinary Garden tour that we're going to do. My name's Sian and I'm a staff member here in the corporate area. So it means I actually am not a professional gardener, but I'm very passionate about the garden that we have here. This garden that we have at William Angliss is one of the more unique and interesting gardens in all of Melbourne, in my opinion. Sitting at just under 500 square metres, this is an enclosed garden. And what that means is that we don't get fog or frost in this garden. It means that it is much more protected from the elements, so you're not going to get huge blustering wind through this area. And it means that it's a safe haven, not just for the staff and students, but for the bees and the birds that come and visit this as well. This garden was created in 2014. It has always been a garden traditionally in the past, but what happened was some teachers came together and talked about making this a learning experience for everyone who comes to visit our gardens. So with that in mind, we teamed up with Melbourne Polytechnic, who brought out their landscape and gardening students, because we like collaborating within the education sector, and we were able to produce this beautiful garden that you can see. Today I'm going to show you a few of the microclimates that we have, going from the tropical area over here, where you will find the banana trees, the barbacoa, and even the Buddha's hand that we've got. The reason why they're actually able to produce the fruit that we have here is these incredible extractor fans that we have here. This is all the hot air that we get from our kitchens, from the bakeries, from any of our classes that have the fans. And as such, we can get the bananas to actually fruit. I'll be taking you down and you'll be able to have a look at them. Right up at the top of the garden, once we get there, that's more of the rain garden, and that's where all the water from the roofs come down into the garden. And then as per the topography of this garden, it flows down to the lower parts here. And what that means is that the garden itself is also a filter. So the water gets filtered through all the soil and the stones and the roots, gets cleaned up, and so then when it goes back into the stormwater drains that we have here, it's much cleaner. So without further ado, I'm going to ask you to rise out of your chairs and we're going to go for a little wander. So I'm going to hop into this garden. I don't recommend anyone else, it's a bit muddy, but you can see here we have the Buddha's hand that is growing here at the moment currently. If you have a smartphone like I do and you've taken a photo, it's very useful that you can click on this information area here. You will see that your phone will say it can look up the plant as well, and it will give you further information on any of the plants that you see around the garden. So feel free to use your phones. I know normally they don't let you do that in class, but today I'm going to let you. Slowly make your way down. Feel free to have a look and I'll meet you at the bottom of the stairs. The banana is not a tree. It is the largest herbaceous plant in the world, which means it's a stem. So what you think is the trunk is actually a stem. So it's essentially a flower. And one of the things is that when you are eating the banana, it's actually a berry. So that's another thing that you can go and tell your friends that, oh, have you had any berries today? Oh yes, I did. I had a banana. So that is where it started originally, and you can see that it sprouts up. Talking about the banana here, once it's already produced the fruit for the season, unfortunately it won't produce anymore, so you need to cut it down. So with this banana area here, you can see in the middle that it's actually got a cut stem right at the bottom, and these plants have sprout up in place. So it doesn't actually use the banana as a seed because it grows up from the bottom of itself. The other thing is just behind us we have a lavender plant. You may not think that it's a food, but normally it is used as an infuser. So if anyone has had lavender ice cream, which is delicious, or tea or any desserts with lavender, that will have been used as an infuser ingredient. There are many plants here in our garden that are infused, and many indigenous plants that will go up further to show you those as well. If I can bring you to our water feature over here. This was designed particularly to look after the bees that come and visit our garden. It's got a wide lip so that the bees can actually land on the lip of this pond, go in and get the water that they need to have a drink. They can sit by there and also hop out of the pond. This is also a pond that has a plant that killed Burke and Wills when they were going through Australia. This little plant called Nardoo, it looks like a 4-leaf clover, but is in fact a fern. And I know it doesn't look like a fern, but if you got your magnifying glass out and had a look, the detail on it is spectacular. The Aboriginal tribe knew what to do when they were harvesting the pods of the Nardoo plant. Unfortunately, there's an enzyme in it that stops you from absorbing all of the nutrition, and that's your B1 vitamin. And the Aboriginals know to bake the pod to get rid of that enzyme. Unfortunately, Burke and Wills had a little bit of knowledge knowing that they could eat it, but they didn't know how to prepare it. So sometimes it's important to read your recipes. So yes. Over here you can see we've also had Jerusalem artichoke, even though the stems are all on the ground. It is part of the seasonal produce that we have here at William Angliss. The reason why we put the stems straight back in is to continue letting the nutrients from those plants go back into the garden. You will also see that we've got a number of compost bins all around, and that is to reduce the waste that we put into the rubbish and to also put more nutrients back into the garden. Please follow me while we continue up on the pathway. While a lot of buildings are going up, we get second sunlight from some of these buildings with the light going onto those buildings and reflecting back into this garden. So we're very lucky to have that. So they do get the natural sun, but then they get a second sun is what our gardener calls it. Standing right here is our coffee plant. One of the cool stories that I enjoy about coffee is that the creature that found coffee beans were the goats. So one day a farmer went into a forest, took the goats into the forest. They obviously were eating these little beans, and he found out that the goats were very energetic and wouldn't go to sleep. And this is how we have found coffee. So when you see a goat next, do say thank you to them, because I know a lot of Melburnians do enjoy their coffee every day. Going up, we're going to come up and have a look at the pomegranate trees that we have here. Unfortunately, they're not in season, but I did beg the gardener not to get rid of our poor little pomegranate sitting there. And this is one of the reasons why we like students to be coming into the garden here. Some students have never seen a tree which has pomegranates. There's many plants here where they're like, oh, I didn't realize pomegranates grew on trees, or I didn't even know there was such thing as a Buddha's hand. So this is again part of the education that we like doing at William Angliss, which gets incorporated into the classes that we have here. Just looking at the water tank here, this is one of the other sustainable things that we do. Not only do we get the water that comes through here, we have a huge water reserve on campus between building A and C, which takes up to 40,000 litres of water. So again, all of that water is used on the plants here in this garden as well as our others. But you will notice that other parts of our garden has more drought resistant plants, so that if we're having problems with water, they're not going to go too poorly. Continue following me, please. Here we have the Tasmanian pepperberry. The Tasmanian pepperberry needs the male and the female plant to produce the berries. As per the name Tasmanian, it really likes colder climate. So if you wish to buy one of these in Victoria, it will do very well here. The berries themselves have not been in production lately, but you can see we're going to get some more sprouting. And this was one of the plants that we used for the Gin's Apprentice that our students did back in 2020. That was with the Buddha's hand as well as with rosemary. A number of the Indigenous plants can have different seasons depending on the region that they're living in. So for example, up in Uluru, plants like the St. David's plum will actually take 18 months to produce, because it's trying to keep everything within the tree surviving, and then will produce once it's got enough nutrients to do it. Whereas in better climate control, it can probably be produced within 12 months. So I'm going to take you up to a few more of the other plants here we've got. The next is a few of the eucalyptus trees that we're coming by. Feel free to crunch them up, have a smell. What smell can you have? There are no wrong, it is sweet. Would you like to? This is the pineapple eucalyptus tree. We're not very original with the names of the plants here. Anyone else? So before I showed you a really deadly plant in the pond, but it looked beautiful. This is sort of the opposite. Looks deadly, but quite delicious. So we have a desert lime next to 2 finger limes here. So please don't touch this plant without gloves on. And that is because you can see it's got all these little thorns coming out. But you can see the fruit right in the middle there that have not been touched by the birds or the students at this point, or maybe even me. So I'm just going to go behind the plant, pick out 1 or 2 of the fruit and show you. So here is what it looks like in the middle, very small. As soon as I start to push, you can see the pearls. Would anyone like a little sample? So I'll just put a little bit out, a little bit out. Oh, you like it?
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you want some? Sorry. There we go. Okay. So very nice to taste, very pops in your mouth, and this is one of the things that I like about it. So it can be used as a really nice garnish on any dessert to give that tangy zestiness. I even put this in my water to give it a little more flavour. So I'm not putting cordial in because it's got its own natural flavour in it. You can purchase these at markets like South Melbourne Market. They've got a very good stall there that sells a number of the indigenous plants that we've got here as herbs and spices. Another example here is we've got the lemon myrtle here. The lemon myrtle is a really lovely tree. It's now preferred by a number of chefs when cooking because unlike lemons, it won't curdle the dairy. So it's an infuser. So you can have really good ice cream, gelati. You can make anything, again, that's got a dairy without curdling. So a number of staff will come here and use the fresh leaves, but a number of chefs will get them dried. And it's really good because you can even crumble them over a nice dessert. You wouldn't want to eat all of the leaf, but again, it gives that lovely aroma and flavour as well. Indeed, yep, this one here. Feel free to take a leaf on the way, crunch it in your hand to have a smell. We're going to continue up here, and you can see that we're starting to go into the kitchen garden where we've got flat leaf parsley, and it's actually going quite wild over here in a good way. Continue around. I'm going to get everyone walking over here. The banana tree here, you can see one of the new little ones popping up here. We even have ginger sitting over in the garden here. And over in our barrels here, we're very lucky that we've got the apples that are just going to start going into season as well. So looking back onto the garden here, you can see a number of the indigenous plants there. We also have another one which I didn't point out at the time, but I will talk about it because I highly recommend it, is the St. David's plum. The St. David's plum is a very interesting one because the plums actually are produced on the stem or the trunk of the plant. But again, it's another prickly one, so I didn't want to necessarily get any of us caught up in it today. But if anyone ever offers you a St. David's plum, please take the opportunity to have it. It's really good. A number of the indigenous produce that we have in Australia is very rich in vitamin C. They're showing that it's actually 3 times better than the European produce that has vitamin C. So thank you very much for attending today. If you've got any questions. I've got to finish with one bad joke, but I love it, which is, what does William Anglis's students and plants have in common? They grow and thrive. Thank you so much. I'm around here for the next 10-20 minutes. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to help and see what I can do. So, no worries.